Welcome to our deep dive on impulsivity. We're going way beyond just like those treat yourself moments, and really kind of exploring how this trait can influence like so many areas of our lives. Everything from the news we choose to
Oh,
even
yeah.
like our religious beliefs.
Yeah, it's surprisingly wide-ranging.
It really is. So to get into all of this, we've got some fascinating research to pull from. Uh, Big names like Brown, Harvard, Yale, a great overview from Very Well Health. And we even found some insights from a clinical psychologist on YouTube.
It's
So,
a good mix.
yeah, it really is kind of covers all the bases. Ready to see where this goes?
Absolutely.
All right, so let's tackle like the big question first. What even is impulsivity? I feel like we throw that word around a lot, but is it really just like acting without thinking?
Well, it's definitely more nuanced than that. The YouTube psychologist we're looking at today actually uses this model called the UPPS model. It breaks impulsivity down into four main factors: urgency, lack of premeditation, lack of perseverance, and sensation seeking. So it's like different flavors of impulsivity in a way.
Hmm, that's really interesting because I feel like I definitely relate to that urgency piece sometimes. Like just that feeling of, I need to do this right now, you
Yeah.
know?
Right.
What about you? Which of those resonates most with you?
Yeah, I think we all have our own unique blend. But what I find fascinating is how this impulsivity goes way beyond just like those quick decisions. Like
Yeah.
the Brown University study we've got, they talk about it as this broad cognitive phenotype.
Okay, so break that down for me. Broad cognitive phenotype. What exactly does that mean?
Basically, it suggests that impulsivity isn't just about grabbing that extra cookie. It can actually affect how we think and perceive the world on a much broader level, like how we solve problems, how we view other people, even our belief systems.
That's kind of wild to think about. Like, it's not just these isolated actions, it's really influencing how we process information. I remember in the Brown study, they had that example of the money hidden under the cups. And like more impulsive people tended to go for the obvious choice, but it was actually the less effective strategy. Kind of makes you think about all the shortcuts we take in life, right?
Right.
And it's not always the best approach.
It makes you wonder, are we always choosing the optimal path or just the most impulsive one?
Hmm. And this idea of quick and easy, it extends to how we consume media, too.
Oh, absolutely.
The study found that more impulsive individuals, they lean towards simpler news sources,
Yeah.
like maybe choosing like quick snippets on cable news instead of like a deep dive on NPR, for example.
Yeah.
Hearing,
Someone who like prefers a quick podcast recap instead of listening to the whole thing. Could that be a sign
oh, no,
of impulsivity?
you're calling me out right now.
Eh,
I love a good podcast recap.
I understand. But remember, we're talking about tendencies and patterns here, not like hard and fast rules.
Okay, good. Good, because I really do enjoy those recaps. But okay, so all of that is pretty interesting. But this idea that impulsivity can actually shape how we see other people, that's a little bit unsettling to me.
Yeah, it is a complex area, and this is where it gets really thought-provoking.
So the Brown study found a correlation between impulsivity and seeing people's character as fixed,
Mm.
like attributing racial differences more to genetics than environment, which is a
Right.
whole other can of worms.
In both the Brown study and the YouTube psychologists we're looking at, they both touch on this possible link between impulsivity and religious belief.
Oh, wow. Okay, so what are they saying? Like,
It's interesting. The idea is that believing in God might actually be a way of like simplifying things
yeah.
on a cognitive level.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, okay. Hold on. Are they saying that like all religious folks are impulsive?
No, not at all. It's really important to remember that correlation doesn't equal causation here.
Okay.
Like Amitai Shenhav, who led that Brown research, he even says, not everyone who is impulsive will be religious. There's just an association between them.
Okay, that clarifies things a little bit. But it is still fascinating to think about, right? Like, does this need to simplify things? Could that potentially explain other behaviors too?
It definitely makes you wonder, right?
Yeah.
And it brings up this really crucial question. Is all impulsivity inherently BAD?
Right? Because, I mean, isn't spontaneity a good thing sometimes? Like that spur of the moment beach trip? That wouldn't happen if we overthought every single decision.
Absolutely.
And even the Very Well Health article, they acknowledge that. Some impulsive decisions can actually be quite positive.
Yeah, it's not about labeling impulsivity as good or bad in itself. The real key is looking at the consequences of our actions. Impulsive behavior becomes a problem when it leads to harm, either to ourselves or to others.
Right, so it's about finding that balance. Like, where does that line get crossed?
Exactly.
From fun spontaneity to something that we should be concerned about.
Exactly.
Yeah, so how do we know when it's crossed that line? Like, from fun and spontaneous to something we should actually be, like, concerned about?
Well, uh, Very Well Health actually gives us some red flags to watch out for, like
Yeah.
sudden, drastic changes in behavior, taking risks that just don't make sense,
Okay.
or when those impulsive actions start negatively impacting things like work and relationships, or even leading to harming others. Those are some signs that it's maybe gone beyond just a harmless quirk.
Yeah, those are some pretty serious consequences. And it's not like impulsivity just exists in a vacuum.
All
Right.
right, exactly. Very Well Health points out that impulsivity is actually a common factor in a whole range of conditions.
Okay.
Like we're talking ADHD, bipolar disorder, personality disorders, autism, even PTSD.
Wow.
Like the list goes on.
So someone listening to this might start to like connect some dots in their own lives or with people they know.
It's definitely something to think about. Although it's important to remember that not everyone with those conditions will necessarily struggle with impulsivity,
Right.
but it is common enough that it's worth being aware of.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's actually where understanding those different UPPS facets that we talked about, that can be really helpful.
Yeah.
Because it's not like a one-size-fits-all kind of impulsivity.
Oh, that's true. So like someone who's high on that urgency scale, they might be more prone to like outbursts or maybe substance abuse,
Oh,
whereas
yeah.
like a sensation seeker might get caught up in riskier behaviors.
Like gambling or something.
Exactly.
Okay.
So understanding which flavor of impulsivity is most at play, that's really important for figuring out like the best ways to manage it, you know?
Right, like tailoring the treatment or the coping mechanisms.
Exactly. And this is where I think our YouTube psychologists take on like the cycle of impulsivity. This really hit home for me. You know, that feeling of like giving in to the urge, then regretting it, acknowledging it's a problem, but then doing it again.
Again.
Doing it again. I've been stuck in that loop so many times.
Oh my gosh, that cycle is so relatable. Like it makes you feel less alone, but also kind of hopeless. Like, am I ever going to break free from this?
Yeah.
It's a common struggle for
Yeah.
sure. And a lot of times treatment isn't even about eliminating impulsivity entirely. It's more about breaking that cycle,
Yeah.
finding ways to manage it effectively.
Right, because as we've established, some level of spontaneity is actually a healthy thing.
Absolutely.
It's about finding that sweet spot between being like overly cautious and just completely reckless.
Precisely.
So the big question then is, what can we actually do about this? Like, what are some practical steps people can take?
Well, Very Well Health actually offers some really helpful tips. I think they've got something in there for everyone.
Okay, lay it on me. What can folks try?
So one suggestion is channeling those impulsive urges into healthy activities, like exercise, social connection, journaling.
Oh, okay.
Things that can provide an outlet for that energy, but in a positive way.
So like next time I get that urge to online shop at 2 a.m., maybe I should go for a run instead.
There you go.
All right.
And they also highlight deep breathing techniques, which can be super helpful in those moments of like intense urgency when you're about to make a choice, you'll regret.
Like hitting the pause button,
Right.
getting a little space between the urge and the action.
Exactly.
I like that.
And to go even deeper, they suggest analyzing what they call the chain of behavior that leads up to those impulsive actions.
Okay, break that down for me. What does that actually look like?
So it's like detective work for your own mind.
Yeah.
Let's say you tend to like impulsively overeat when you're stressed.
Okay.
The chain might look like this. Tough day at work, feeling overwhelmed, craving comfort, reaching for the snacks. You see?
Yeah.
So recognizing that chain can actually help you interrupt it before you even make that like bad choice.
So it's not just about like willpower in the moment. It's about being proactive, recognizing your patterns, building those good habits.
You got it.
Okay.
And for those who might need some extra support, they also highlight group therapy as an option. Hearing other people's experiences, realizing you're not alone in this, that can be incredibly powerful.
Yeah, it's so easy to feel like you're the only one struggling with these things. But having that shared space can be really validating.
Exactly. And when you can break down that shame and isolation, you can start to approach impulsivity not as like a personal failing, but as something to understand and manage.
Yeah, like a challenge to work with.
Exactly. And that's when real change can happen.
It's like we're not trying to become these like perfectly controlled robots or something. It's more about understanding our own impulses and figuring out how to like work with them.
Yeah, you put it perfectly. It's about making those more intentional choices.
Yeah.
Even if those choices still have an element of, spontaneity and fun.
Right, exactly. Well, this has been such an eye-opening deep dive. We've gone way beyond just like scratching the surface of impulsivity here.
Yeah, and I hope our listeners are walking away with a much deeper understanding of themselves. And, equipped with some actual tools to start making choices that really align with their values and their goals.
You know what they say, knowledge is power. And I really believe that. When you understand what's driving your behavior, you can actually start making real changes.
Absolutely. And to that point, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. You know, knowing your own impulsive tendencies, is there one small change you can make today to shift towards a more intentional choice? It can be something as simple as taking 5 minutes to breathe before reacting to a stressful situation, or maybe choosing a longer, more in-depth news article instead of just skimming the headlines.
I love that. It's not about overhauling your whole life overnight, right? It's about those small, manageable steps that can lead to those big changes over time.
Exactly. Small steps can lead to remarkable transformations.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into impulsivity. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep choosing consciously.